Welcome everyone to today's session. This is Jim with Vatech America. I've got Paul Satone online with me also. Today is April 15th, week 3rd in our weekly webinar series. We've been broadcasting live Wednesdays, every day at noon Eastern. I'm the education team manager for Vatech America, and thank you for joining. I have Paul Satone. I have the pleasure of working with him every week on this. Paul is broadcasting also live from Las Vegas. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, Jim. How you doing? Good to be here. Excited for this session. I see we have a lot of people logged in that were with us previously and a lot of new faces, or not faces, but names as well. So great to be here.
Definitely. It's another good turnout for us, and we're excited to work towards the next session of what we're doing today. Thank you all for attending. Like Paul said, today we're going to be talking about our 3D-i software specific to our implant planning. So let me get to our section here and we'll go through and perfect. So education web series, third in the series. Today, all about implants. Paul, I know I've been cooped up in the house for a couple of weeks. You and I have been working on these web series. I was able to get out a little bit over the weekend, hang out a bit, been kind of surfing online, and I know everybody's concerned with protection here. Not everybody's going to be that lucky. So a little humor to start on our session today.
Nice.
But yeah, let's kind of get down to business here. April 15th, quick and easy implant planning. We did a survey last week for everybody, and one of the questions we asked was, what are you interested in seeing in future sessions? And one of the top things was, top two really, implant planning, really top three, implant planning, patient education or sharing case planning with our patients, and then also anatomy. So I think in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be able to springboard into those things today. But Paul, what do we have coming up for the next couple of weeks?
Sure. So next week, same time, Wednesday, the 22nd, we're calling it One Slice at a Time with Dr. Todd Engel, presenting treatment. So really excited for that one. On the 29th, we have anatomy, comparison of anatomical structures in a PAN and CBCT, session 5, and then session 6, anatomy, kind of be part 2. And anatomical structures continued, so should be some good stuff coming up.
Definitely.
Also, any feedback again is greatly appreciated on future topics. We have a bunch of different ways to get a hold of us. We have our email addresses up there, sales@Vatech America, for any feedback regarding these sessions, topics, anything you'd like to discuss or see in future webinars. Our education email is education@Vatech America. Any questions for the education team regarding software, any of those types of things, please feel free to reach out to us. Our whole education team is on this webinar, so we'll be happy to answer any questions with that email. And also customer service, cs@vatechamerica.com. Really easy way to contact customer support there. And then, of course, we have our website, vatechamerica.com. And we're also available and pretty active on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So lots of different ways to get in touch with us.
Yeah, it's really been neat to see everybody on LinkedIn and Facebook, where everybody can be sharing our different dental doctors, partners, and everything on there too. So that's been a really neat tool.
Right.
As far as today for our session, same as our weeks in past. If you're not familiar with the GoToWebinar, off to the right of your screen, you should have a little drop down, the orange arrow, which will collapse your webinar series or your control panel. You can pop that back out. Top of the screen, Paul and myself, and then my screen below that. If you're having audio issues, probably using computer audio, you can always use the help button up here to troubleshoot. If you continue to have issues there, I would recommend using phone call there. We talked about this as being a question and answer session. As the weeks in past, we have our full education team online. You can go navigate over to your questions bar, ask the question, and our education team will either answer that, they will flag that for us to answer that as a live part of the webinar, or if we don't get to that by the top of the hour, from 1 to 1:30 Eastern, we're also going to be doing a question and answer session, so we can capture it then or talk about it then. If by chance we don't get that, we'll always, you can email us and we'll talk about that. After today's session, we're going to run this from 1 to 1:30. Immediately after presentation, Q&A session, talking about 3D-i software, what we covered today. Also, patient consultation. We also have a guest that's going to be joining us, talking about some up and coming things that's going on. So we're really excited about that. Quick overview for today's session. As we've done in the past, a scan overview. Paul and I are going to look at 2 separate scans. We're going to look at an 8x8 scan. We're going to look at a 16x9 scan. Paul's going to be going through single site implant, specifically to the 3D pan window, and navigating through there. Followed, I will be using the sectional window to go through a larger case, fully edentulous case, looking at multiple implants in the mandible there. As we go through that, we're going to look at customizing our settings, setting implants per tooth, other specific settings for the implants. Data export, how do we export this to either our labs or dental partners? Also patient consultation, we planned this case, but now what do we do with that? And then guided surgery. At what point are we looking for guided surgery for some of these cases? So that's going to be one of our other topics that's been very popular there. This is, disclaimer, this treatment plan presentation is intended to demonstrate the features and functions of the Vatech treatment software. As a clinician, it's your responsibility to utilize these tools along with your own expertise and professional judgment to create and implement a successful treatment plan for your patients. Paul, I think that's all the things we need to cover before we start the session. Shall we go ahead and get into the software and look at some of our cases?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Sounds good. Well, let's go ahead and start with our Vatech, the Ez3D-i software here. I pulled up my Ez3D-i. We've searched for 2 patients. I have them both labeled April 15th so we can identify them easily. And Paul, I think you're going to start with the April 8th. We've taken some screenshots at the top up here. We have a pan and a 8x8 scan down here. What would you like to start with, Paul?
Let's go ahead and take a look at the 2D panel first. Let's take a look at that, double click on that and bring that up. So this panel right here is a really nice pan. In particular, there's a couple areas of concern we can see right off the bat. We have the impacted tooth on tooth number 16 up there, so we can clearly see that. Looks like there may be undeveloped tooth next to that too. But particularly, I want to focus on tooth number 9, which you can kind of see a little bit of radiolucency near the root there. But I want to just kind of point out the difference seeing it on here versus the CBCT. This patient actually ran into a pole and the tooth is necrotic. So just wanted to point that out on the 2D panel. So let's go ahead and open up the CBCT now. So we can open it from here. We can either double click down on the bottom because we are in the viewer tab, or we can go back to the patient tab and double click it from there. So either way.
So let me go ahead and let's look here, Paul. Yeah, and then we'll go ahead and open it here. So here's our 8x8 scan that we've opened.
Great. So let's take a look at it, kind of scrolling through it from the superior border down to the inferior on the axial tab. So if we just go ahead and right click on this axial tab here, let's switch it to main menu. Also, what I like to do is if we can click on the sharpening on the left-hand windowing section, we can see we have sharpen and max sharpen. I always like to see a crisp image. Again, that's a little bit of personal preference, but scrolling down this axial view, let's take a look at what we see as we scroll. We're going to push it all the way to the top of the superior border. You can see it's the blue line in the sagittal slice to the right. You can see where that blue line is. That's where we are positioned. So if we just scroll down with our mouse wheel there, we can see the nasal septum there. We'll see the sinuses as we scroll through there, the maxillary sinus, the nasal concha there. Just scrolling down. And as we kind of get to a little bit down further, we can see some areas of abnormality. Number 9 there, that root where the radiolucent area, we can definitely see the difference between that, the left and the right side there. And in the molar area, we can see the radiopaque area around the molars there. So and we'll take a look at that in more detail when we get to the 3D pan. So as we scroll down some more, keep going inferior there, we can see the incisive canal as we go. You can see number 9 there. We can see how wide that canal is as we scroll through it as well. And we can see the void or communication there area and just the difference and how wide that canal is. So let's keep scrolling there, Jim.
Sounds good.
You can see the roots there very nicely as we scroll through it. Then we get to the airspace there, and there's where the bite stick shows up on the scan.
Yeah, Paul, you and I talked about this beforehand and wanted to kind of point out, look where the patient is biting on the bite stick. So I can really see right here, the bite stick groove. And actually I'm cutting off the labial edge of the patient here. So we're missing part of the anterior tooth there. So we want to ensure that the patient is properly in the bite stick groove so we don't miss any of our anatomy here. Now, maybe by moving them forward, we may have been capturing a little further posterior, but we don't want to take the chance on having to take the scan again because we missed some anatomy due to some malpositioning here. So should we keep scrolling down?
Yeah, let's keep scrolling on that axial slice down towards the inferior border. See those roots nicely, and then we'll see the mental foramen coming up here soon, right there on each side. And as we scroll down, see the hyoid bone, and then we're at the end of our scan down there.
Perfect.
So I really want to focus. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Now, where do you want to go next on our scan here?
Let's focus in on tooth number 9. So quick way to do it, you can either double click it on the axial slice or right on that 3D pan. If we just click right in the center of that tooth, it'll kind of focus field in right in that tooth. But I really want to focus on the 3D pan here. So we see a really good view of it there. But what I think one thing that makes this software really, really special is the 3D pan tab, which was designed for, in my opinion, pretty much all clinical aspects in mind, from implant planning, crack and fracture detection, to patient presentation, in a way that makes it really easy to understand for both the clinician and the patient. So, so it's kind of a one-stop shop, I like to say. So we're going to focus in on a few things here. So you can see that we have our setting defaulted to the pan rendering view, but I like to use the MIP, the maximum intensity projection filter, on the left. So if we click that, I prefer to use that because you can see the ridge really well. So it's really nice for implant planning. So we're going to just position our navigation box basically over what we want to look at. So let's start with that impacted molar up on number 16. So we can place it there. We can angle it how we want it with those blue dots on the left and right side there. And we can kind of scroll on those section slices to move left and right on there as well. We can look at that, what appears to be an undeveloped tooth there. We can see that. We could rotate around the box if we want to grab the blue dots and rotate around that position just to get a better view of it. So it's really kind of a customizable view here. But again, I want to focus on tooth number 9. So a quick and easy way, again, just double click on the tooth, the center of the tooth. It'll focus that box right in the center of the tooth. You have your 3 slices there, which are represented by the sections on the bottom, the 3, 24, 25, 26, which obviously are fluid and move as you scroll through those slices. So we're basically, we're going to place an implant here, but we're going to focus in the red line in the center. We're going to angle it the same angle as we want our implant. So we can adjust it with those blue dots. We want their center red slice, which is the slice in the middle. And we can position the blue line. A good place to position the blue line is kind of at the ridge in general. And then we can scroll on the slices on the bottom. We need to adjust that. But if we right click on the slice itself, that's how we change our interval. Again, really important. Interval is the distance between your slices. We'll have ours set to 1 millimeter there, which you could change if necessary. There. So from there, we can just simply measure. We can see the abnormality right there on that slice. So we're going to measure and put our implant in. So we click on our measuring tool on the toolbar on top, and then we'll measure from the ridge to the tip there, and we can do the same labial to palatal area as well. And you can kind of keep measuring until you want to turn your tool off and just do a right click to turn it off. So from there, you know, we could take a screenshot if we want to capture those measurements, put the camera up there. Usually it'll say save the database there, but now we can just hide, simply right click and hide our implants if you want, or delete them, either way. And we'll go ahead and we're going to click insert implant on the left, and it's going to place it right at that angle on that slice. So we'll click on insert implant, right? So just kind of talking about this box for a second. So we can do single or multiple. So either way, we're going to do single for this demonstration.
Sounds good, Paul. On signal here.
We'll choose our tooth number first, right?
Go to
so
9.
Number 9. And so you can see the company there in the lineup. So we have ours defaulted to Strawman, which obviously you could change the defaults there. So we choose our company. We have our lineup, you know, the different brands, the different models there. Before you hit set as default, always, if you want to make it a default, if yours is not defaulted, pick the size first. So we're going to use the 4 by 10 by 10. So the occlusal and apical diameter columns, and then we have the length, right? So we're going to click that, and then we're going to click set as default. Now ours is already set, but if yours is not, just click that. It'll make it the default. But just keep in mind one thing: it only defaults it for that one tooth. So we have it kind of so it's kind of customizable because you may want different implants on assigned to different teeth. So that's why it's set up like that. But so you can set each tooth, and you can do that in the settings also before you get to this point. But each tooth number could have a separate default. So from there on the bottom, well, let's talk about the crown. So the crown on the left side in the corner, we're gonna just attach that to this implant right off the bat. And you can see to the right of that, there's the color. It's set to yellow, but you could change it to, you know, white or whatever color you prefer. Hit OK there. And then we have axis and click point. What axis does, it's personal preference. Axis will place it directly on the slice directly. Click point, a little box pops up, and you have to navigate where you want to place it. So for this purpose, we're going to use click point, and we're going to click insert, and this box will pop up, and you simply place the cursor over where you want to put the implant. So you can see the cursor has the little implant icon. It's just waiting for you to click. So we're going to put it right on the 3D, and you can put it on the 3D pan or the section tab, either way. We're going to put it on the 3D pan. We're going to click. It's going to place our implant. Okay, and then we're going to then I like to focus in on the section slices, right? So if we click on the implant, hover over it, you'll get a crosshair, and then you can move it in either direction from there. And we can tilt it. So we can tilt it, you know, near the apex or the occlusal area, but it has that axis tilt line on each side. So we can direct it that way. Great. Perfect. So a couple right-click options here on the implant. So if we right-click on it, we get our menu. So property will bring us back to the property window where we kind of started from. If you need to change the implant altogether, the company, or anything else, the tooth number, etc. So we'll hit cancel there and go back and right-click on the implant again. Obviously, you could hide, delete it. Show info, if you're wondering kind of like if you wondered what implant you put in there and you can't tell, you can right click on it, show info. You know, you may want to take a screenshot, you know, those types of things. So that'll show or hide the information there. So we can go ahead, right click and hide it. So if we go ahead and you can also do it on the 3D pan, same thing. So if we right click on it again, we can edit the implant. It's the quickest way to change the size. So we have the length, the occlusal, apical sizes, but it's only from that one particular manufacturer. So basically what's in the library already. So we can go there, and then we'll do another right click. And then, so you can copy the implant. If you're doing multiple, you could just copy that, go to your next position and paste it. But an important thing is the lock feature. So after you do your implant, it's a good idea to lock it, especially if you're doing multiple, so you don't accidentally move it when you move on to the next implant. So you can right click, you can see there's a padlock displaying when we try to click on it. So to unlock it, lock it or unlock it, basically just right click on it, and see, now we can unlock it. So there, perfect. Okay, so anything you want to add, Jim?
Yeah, let's talk about one more thing over here. Another quick way to place an implant. Let's
Right.
go over here to number 8 really quick. We get this question a lot, and using this for, you know, kind of patient education here. Let's say I'm a patient and I come in and we do need to place an implant here. One quick way to do this, I can come here to my measurement tool. I can come down and just draw a line or take a measurement. And then with a right click feature, we can just go down to insert implant, and we're going to place our implant here. So a lot of my doctors have shared with me that, you know, the patient themselves really doesn't care what brand implant. We can use this as an educational tool for our patients to talk to them, saying, hey, we do have enough bone here, or it's a good area for an implant. So think about using that measurement tool where you just go to measure, you click here, and then you right click, and it will put your implant right along that long axis. And it does pick from a generic set of implants there, but you can set it to one company if you would like to do that. So that's one of the other things that I wanted to add there. But yeah, want to go on to the other right click features?
Yeah, let's take a look at the crown. So looking at that crown there, I want to flip it up and get an occlusal surface view, because I want to kind of customize that crown, just kind of demonstrate that. So if we flip that up, yep, in that occlusal view, we have this nice feature to our software. It's called clipping. So yep, it's easier to position it where you want to move it first. Click on apply clipping, and you can see in the lower left-hand corner there, we can choose the direction. So whether you want to cut it sagittally, axially, you know, just pick your direction. So we're going to use axial. We're essentially going to get rid of the lower arch, or just kind of cut away from it. So there's a foot and a head slider. So if we go ahead and we'll just grab our slider and slide all the way up until we essentially remove the lower arch there. There we can see a nice occlusal view. You could adjust that if necessary. But if we right click on the crown itself, we can use this really nice tool called Show Controller. And it's basically, it's like a globe kind of an object. And you can basically turn it in any direction, tilt it left or right, you know, palatal, labial, any direction you want. So we're going to kind of just adjust that so it looks a little more realistic there. Yep. Looks good.
All right.
And then the other option here is another right click. If we right click on it, we can also easily change the size. So if you click on edit crown, similar to edit implant, you can change, you know, again, same thing, mesial, distal, lingual buccal, and the height, change the size that way. Yep, perfect. So that's editing the crown a little bit. If we go ahead and click on the implant, it'll bring up our bone density in that little bone density section, which if yours is not set to here, by default, I think the layout is not set to the bone density setting to display there. So if you do want that, you can click on edit layout, or sorry, change layout. And you can see we have ours defaulted to that third one. So, and that's really nice because it does show that all the time, that implant bone density section there. So you see it's displayed in colors. It's what it's doing is it's measuring around that implant site right there as we rotate around it, and it's in Hounsfield units, which is on the left, and that's the color scale. So what that little green kind of that arrow thing that's floating there is referring to the arrow next door there to the scout. So it's basically showing you the direction. So you can see that that arrow is facing the facial side right now, you know, as you move it around. You know, the scale there, again, is Hounsfield units, where 0 is distilled water, -1,000 is air. So, and also we have the bone density click box in the windowing section. So, you know, you can measure it before you put your implant, after, but if we click that bone density checkbox, we get a measurement reading, and you can see on that section slice where areas may be more dense or less dense. And if you want to see another scale, we can click on the little gear that's next to the words bone density on the left, and it will display this nice graph here. And you can see what the colors are representing, what the software is assuming is going on in that space. You have the blue, kind of the rainbow colors, So you have the blue is D1, you have D2 for green, D3, D4, D5, and then again you have the Hounsfield units on the bottom. Perfect.
Perfect. And that's another thing to note. This bone density is only in the 3D pan window. That's
Right.
the only icon we have it there. Yeah. Perfect. All right.
Great. So then the final touch, as I like to call it. So we can rotate around the implant. So an easy, quick way to do it in here is on that scout view. We have the little blue buttons, L and B for lingual buccal. You can grab them, and as you click them and rotate around, you can see it's moving on the section slice all the way around the implant. The one thing about it is you're not directly on it. So what I like to do is actually use the oblique tool. That's kind of the final step here to rotate around it so it's on the same axis. So if we go back to the MPR tab, that's where our oblique tool is located. You can see it on the left side, oblique. But before we click it, we want to center whatever we want to rotate around. In this case, it's the implant to our axis point. So it's really easy. If you just right-click on the implant and select Start Oblique Menu, it'll align the entire axis to that implant. So you're right in the center of it, so you'll get a full view of it. And so this is our oblique mode. So we have our oblique window in the upper left here. So that's we're focusing in on that. And then on our axial view, you can see we have that orange-red line, which is the slice on the left. Okay, so the green boxes there basically expand or contrast the view as we flip those or move those there. And then we can grab right there, and you see the double arrow, kind of the little wavy arrows. You can click that and rotate around the fixed point, which is the green dot in the center. In this case, it's the implant. And the arrow is the direction. So it's telling us that that upper left image, we're looking right now from the lingual side. You know, whatever, it just basically moves with it fluidly and shows us the direction. We can see that abnormality there very well. We could take a screenshot, and you can also move the implant in here. So if you are rotating the implant and you realize you're not in the bone or something like that, you can simply grab it on the oblique window and move it or tilt it as needed. So you have all those functionalities you do on the 3D pan tab there.
Nice, Paul. Any other thing you need to add on that, Paul?
No, I think pretty good here. Looking forward to seeing some multiple implants, Jim.
Right. Now, I do have one question that came in is, can we plan from the crown down? So we do have the option there to basically, we could delete everything, and then we could start with our insert implant, place the crown, and then work backwards. So that is another option to be able to do. So that is one question that did just come in. We'll talk about that maybe towards the end or in the Q&A session for that there. Okay. So
one question I got, sorry to interrupt you. It said, where did you get the oblique tool? Where's the button for the oblique tool that we just talked about? So it's on the NPR tab, right there in the upper left, you see oblique there.
Yeah, so I can either click on this, which allows me to navigate to my oblique area, but what we did is we had an implant placed, right, and we right-clicked on that implant. So if I was doing this for a certain tooth, what we could do is we could click back here for tooth number 9. We could go to the center there through that canal. We could rotate all of our lines to get through the long axis, and then click on oblique, and then our axial window, click on that center point, and now we're rotating around that 360 degrees. If we already have the implant placed, we just right-click, and that's going to set that oblique, all of our axis points through the long axis of our implant there. So, perfect.
Thanks.
All right. Well, let me do this. I'm going to go ahead and close out of our 8x8 here. Let's look at our 16x9. And I'm going to double click. And while this is opening, you know, Paul just covered the 8x8 single side implant using that 3D pan window. We're going to talk a little bit more about that at the end or towards the end on how we're going to take some screenshots and then utilize our consult tabs to talk to our patients and do some patient education through there. And that will kind of lead us into our next couple sessions next week on the 22nd and then the 29th and then also April 6th there. So kind of keep that in mind as this opens. So another thing to think about is, you know, we have 2 scans here. We have an 8x8 and we have our 16x9. So questions I get from doctors is what scan and when? When should I use my larger 16:9 scan, or when should we use our smaller focused field of view? Will the 8x8 scan work adequately? Let's say on this case, we're going to look at like an all-on-4 maybe in the mandible. Can I use my 8x8 or an 8x9 scan specifically for that? So I think we're going to address some of those issues today as we go through this case planning here. All right. So that will be coming up here in a second, and you can see my screen. We can have our 3D screen right here. And I've got my 16:9 scan on there. And as I scroll through, fully edentulous patient, 16:9, we captured our condyles, airway, inferior border of the chin, and well into the sinus, even into the superior sinus there. So one thing I want to talk about here is kind of some positioning, I won't say issues here. I'm going to enlarge my coronal slice here and look where the bottom of our mandible is. Really, this patient looks tipped to me. Also, it looks like maybe on the sagittal window that the patient's tipped up a little bit high. So these two things could cause some issues with positioning, and really we're going to have to make some extra efforts to move this around to get an accurate image here, or an accurate orientation, I should say. So I'm going to move this forward, and let's scroll here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my axial slice, so we're going to bring this down, and I'm going to go ahead and get this lined up and rotate. Two different points that I could rotate to get this center. I can go the inferior border of the mandible, or I'm going to use a little mylohyoid ridge right here, get that lined up. And now what we're going to do, see how we have our angle, or our center sagittal slice centered there. I'm going to go ahead and right click on my axial window, switch to main view, and we're going to bring this up to the superior border, just like Paul did on his 8x8, and we've done every week. We wanted to look at the patient's overall dental health. Now I'm in my superior sinuses, looking at the cephenoid sinuses. This is going to bring the question of what are we looking at, and when do we consider using a radiologist to review our scans? We can see our external auditory medius here. We're starting to see the zygomatic arch. We can see our condyles, nasal septum, going through our maxillary sinus, just kind of do an overall evaluation. The nasal concha through here, incisive canal. As I'm doing this, I'm looking over here on the right for my axial slice. So let's keep scrolling down here. See our nerve here and here, our airway, getting into the mandible. And now we're starting to see our ridge there. And what I'm looking for really is my mental foramen. So if we did our adjustments right, we should be able to see those somewhat at the same time. I can see over here and over here. So I might need to slightly adjust this to bring that into view so I can see mental foramen here and here. So really see how this patient was, malpositioned a little bit. But I'm going to go with this here, and let's go draw a curve. And we're going to go around the arch. And notice I am following the labial edge of that, because I want to look at, we see where those mental foramens are at. Double click. And now it takes us back to our sectional window. So if you tuned in last week, we did a lot through this sectional window. We're going to look at this again. I could double click here. We'll get our 9 windows over here so we can kind of view what we're seeing. So I'm going to enlarge my panorama view. And we're going to focus right here in the anterior portion. So let's first change our thickness down. We change that down to 0.5 millimeter. And I'm going to find my mental foramen so I can see, we're going to say here to here. So let's take that measurement. I'm going to go across there. We're about 43. We could come here and we can go to, we'll go about 21.5. And we can move that over a bit. All right. As I scroll through here, we can see we have some recession here. So I'm going to bring this up to my lowest point. And let's go back to our 3D pan, or full view here. Now I am in my slice 72 over here, which corresponds to my vertical slice here. And one thing to note, this green line represents my 0 point here. So I'm going to put a reference line right there. And let's go ahead and enlarge this window. And what I could do now is let's take a measurement across there and see what type of bone we have. as we're looking for our ridge. So we're at about 7.5, almost 8. I could probably drag this out. Yep, through there. So I'm going to say we're going to leave it right at that height. Probably what we should first do is trace our nerve. So let's go through here. Let's find our mental foramen. So I can see right over here, there's our mental foramen. I'm going to come over here to trace my nerve, and I'm going to go ahead and click through. If you have questions specifically about tracing the nerve here, we have our video library on our website in our Customer Learning Center. In that Customer Learning Center, we have specific videos on implant planning. We actually also have all of our webinars that we've done, including this one, will be loaded to that Customer Learning Center. So if you have questions on this or other clinical uses, it's a good, valuable reference to look at. Let's go back over here and find our nerve, and I'm going to go towards the anterior and see maybe there's a little branch or a loop there. So let's double click here. I'm going to go over to my right side and come across till I see my mental foramen there. And we can see it here. So I'm going to scroll. You can also scroll here on the panorama view. We can go out labial and back through. All right. So let's go to our nerve again. And I'm going to go click through. And we can click here. And I'm just going to follow the center of that bundle. I'm seeing my bundle here. A couple other things about the nerve here. I have mine color changed to yellow. You can do that in your properties. Also the diameter, right now mine is set right to 2 millimeters. If you wanted to change that, you could change that and customize that. And that's where you're going to do that. So let's go back anterior. All right, let's come up to our nerve. And I'm going to go ahead and click, and we'll trace and click. And we're going to double click. And now we can see as we scroll through here, we can see our nerve traced on there. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to scroll. And this time I'm going to go ahead and draw another curve through here. And this time I'm going to go right through the center of the ridge. And let's double click. And what I want to do now is find our nerve so we can see them here. We had our measurements there. Let's go ahead and take those again. Actually, let's do this. Let's go ahead and go over to Insert Implant. And we're going to go ahead and place our implants here. So Paul talked about single. I'm going to do multiple here. And I'm going to go for click point. We're going to go 27, 25, 24, and 22. So we're going to place our 4 implants. You can see they're all been preset to Straumann as I click through there. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Insert. And I get a lot of questions about how do we parallel to get these implants perfectly parallel. I don't have a magic button that does that within our software, but I can say, let's go ahead and place our first implant. We're going to place it here. We're going to place our second one, 25. We'll go 24, and then we'll go with our 22 there. All right, so those are our implants. So what I would really like to do now is kind of look and see, are we in bone? So I do need to move this, and let's move this first implant, move it back into the bone. We can do our rotation here. We'll rotate that. Let's go across for 25, grab that, move that into bone. We can go ahead and rotate, maybe move this around. All right. So now my question is, how do I get my angle here on 27? First I want to do is I want to place this in bone. I'm going to scroll back across. And what I can do now is I can grab or use my measurement tool, which is this angle tool. So I'm going to come here, draw through the long axis of the implant. We're going to measure out. We're going to find our 30 degrees. Call that 30 degrees there. I can click on the body of my implant, and now I can change my angle to go along that long axis there. Other thing I'm going to do is I'm also going to grab this angle, because right now if I scroll through I can see my implant. It looks like an oval, so we're basically slicing down the side of the implant there. I want to slice through the long axis of the implant. So as I scroll through here, now we can see our implant through that long axis. Let's come here if we needed to change this, we could move this around or change our implant there. But I want to go ahead and look at my implant on the other side. I'm going to go ahead and grab my line here. We can grab our vertical line, and we're going to move that back to vertical. We can scroll through and find my implant there. Let's make sure we're in bone. And then let's scroll back here, going through. So here's my angle from the opposing arch there, or the contralateral arch. We're going to drag this across, make sure we have this set at our 30 degrees. All right. I can then click on the body of my implant. We can rotate through. And let's see if we are right along that access line at our 30 degrees. Let's double check to make sure we're in bone. So let's rotate this, bring this back across through the long axis of our implant. And we can see that we are through our implant there. So one last time, I'm going to hit spacebar here, and let's scroll down to see our implants. And I can see all of our implants placed here. I'm going to go draw a curve one last time around the arch here. And let's double click. And now we can see our implants placed here. So we are at the same trough. So when we do need to trough off this ridge, we are at the same height. And we can scroll across, double check that we are in bone. Going all the way through, we can see that we are far enough away from that nerve. If we do have concerns there, I might go ahead and grab my implant and move that more towards the midline, and then double check to make sure we're in bone. Come across. Let's come across here. Here, if we do need to change that a bit, we could grab this and move this more towards the midline there. But now we can see all of our implants placed on there. As we go through that, we may take some photos through here. We could go through and take maybe some smaller photos of a specific area. Let's capture this. So we have our plan on there. So we have our case planned, and let's scroll up, and we can see our implants here. And I'm going to go right to the crest of the ridge of all my implants. Talk a little bit about this, maybe talk about AP spread. Really going to use this where I'm going to work with my lab. What type of prosthesis are we placing on here? What materials? So we really need to keep all that in mind. That's where we will talk about using our labs or our prosthodontists on that. But we can do a right click here, switch to main view, and we can see our case plan. So if I did want to show the patient this, we could scroll here. I could use my annotation and my sculpt tool. Let's cut everything out except for our anterior portion here. Let's delete here, and that's going to delete that off of there. So big case, we did not really look at case planning the maxilla. Looks like we're going to be using this for maybe one of our next webinars, so we can look more of that and from a clinician's view of case planning and talking to the patient. But there is our scan. We could talk to the patient. Paul, before you looked at your apply clipping over here, and I'm going to go back to my axial, and this time I'm going to tip down from the head down, and we can cut that down and go through, and we can look at our implants there. And let's reset our clipping there. So, and we could reset our sculpt right here. So a couple of last things. Let's right click on here, switch to main view, and we can measure for our AP spread. So let's go through and trace a line right through the center of our two most anterior implants. Let's trace a line through the distal edge of our posterior implants. And I might need to change this angle here a little bit. Right there. We can take some measurements here. So from our line here and our line here. And now we know that we need to change either 1.5 times that number or 2, depending on the material we're using and the individual setup. know there's a lot of different clinical questions here. In this, we're just showing how to use the software specifically for the Vatech, what we can do with our software here. So let's go up to there, and then we would draw another line across. And that's going to be our distance for our AP spread specific to that. Let's talk more about the consultation tool. Have our patient come in. We're showing them our videos, and I'm going to go over here to change layout. I think this is a really powerful tool here because what we can do is we can come over here to our favorites list, and let me scroll across, and we can show our patient our videos. We can talk about the denture that they've been wearing. And then how do we incorporate talking about our fixed prosthesis that we're going to be utilizing there? Or we can play, another video, different videos, kind of going through the software, kind of exploring that. There is no sound, but we can talk to the patient here through this. So that, I think we went through a lot of material. We're going to talk more about this on the Q&A session. But right now, I would like to talk a little bit more about what we have coming up here. So let me do this. Let's go delete. Paul, anything else that I may have missed on this Ez3D-i software here with our software of kind of going through and showing the patient? I think I got Paul on, he's answering questions over there. So I am going to show you another tool here. Let's look at our sculpt tool.
Sorry, I had it on mute. Sorry.
That's all right. I'm going to sculpt right through the center of my implant here, and that's supposed to be a straight line, but we'll get pretty close. We can cut out half of our patient here. I'm going to click delete, and that's going to delete the side off of here. Give it a second. And now what I could do is I can rotate this around. We can add some bone here. And now we can actually right click and drag. And I'm gonna use the wheel on my mouse to scroll this closer. I can see my implant in there. Paul talked about using our controller if we need to change that. Also, Paul had talked about right clicking here and locking our implants because don't want to move them on accident. So if I lock these, as I rotate around, these will not get moved. I've had doctors say, I did my case planning and all of a sudden I accidentally moved this, and we had some issues there, had to replan. So let's leave it right there on that. So reset here. We're going to revisit this. For this here, let me hit pause. And what we're going to do is let's talk about some future sessions that we have coming up, Paul. And we talked about having from this case here, what we can do is let's talk about what we have coming up in the future. So April 15th today, we have our next session, which is going to be April 22nd.
Yeah.
So here we have April 22nd, presenting treatment one slice at a time with Dr. Todd Engel. As a precursor to that, last week we sent out in your email, you got Introduction to Computer Guided Surgery. Hope everybody had a chance to view that. If you didn't, we'll send you the link again. But another thing in the series is this guided full mouth rehabilitation that Dr. Engel is going to be doing with 3D diagnostics. We can talk about that. And then he is going to be joining us on the 22nd, going over case presentation and how are we telling the story, really talking about this. So what I'd like to do is introduce Dr. Todd Engel. In 2005, Dr. Engel founded the Engel Institute Dental Implant Training. He currently resides in Charlotte, North Carolina. The Engel Institute has grown and is now 3 flagship locations throughout the U.S. Many of today's attendees have been to the Engel Institute for doctors' hands-on implant classes. Dr. Engel, welcome, and let's go ahead and bring you up on screen here. All right.
I think we have to unmute him, Jim.
Hey guys.
There he is. Dr. Engel, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. You guys look so nice, so dapper. You guys look like you should be NBC hosts.
We're working on that.
Facade.
That's right.
Well, thanks for
Great.
having me. Had I known, I would have worn a nice bow tie for you, but I'm still in my running suit. So what's going on?
Well, today we just went through, some implant planning within the Vatech software. We've been building on this series, as you know, of utilizing the Vatech software for basic use. Last week we looked at a little more details. This week we really looked at a few scans more in detail and more complex on what we can do with the software. I know you've been doing, your guided surgery webinar courses with 3D-DX. I know you logged on here and you saw that we were doing our large 16:9 with an all-on-4, and there's a lot of questions that have come up and where to go with this. One thing I really didn't talk about was exporting this and also working with guided surgery companies like 3D Diagnostics. So we had shared your information about your previous webinars. So I think we have a little good foundation of our audience hopefully has listened to that, but we would like you to kind of talk a little bit about where you would go with this case of talking to this patient, not only just for showing the software here, but how are you really selling or telling the story to this patient and working again with 3D Diagnostics or another company to get your guide made in the workflow and more really comfort for the patient so they're not traumatized through surgery and things.
Yeah. Well, great question. First of all, thank you. I was watching you guys, and you did a really nice job. So congrats on that, both of you two. I've tuned into a couple of webinars here and there, and some of them have been on 3D stuff, and it can be quite confusing to the beginner. And so I think you guys have done a really nice job of not only teaching the software, but speaking at a level where everybody has some interest. So thank you both, and thank you for calling on me. So a couple things. Guided surgery is just a phenomenal field, as we all know, and this is one extreme part of it. It's kind of like I call it the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? So with respect to your question, Jim, in terms of the patient, the communication between the patient, here's my feeling. We not only let's go back to November, okay, when kind of life was a little bit different, so to speak, for all of us. I always felt like bringing the patient into the 3D world and kind of explaining what I was looking at to them and customizing the care for them, it really brought us together in a number of ways. It allowed me to tell their story. It's almost like if you're building a house on a lot you bought, right? And I'm not going to just show you anybody's house on anybody's lot. I'm going to work with you on what house would be best for your lot. And then the whole theme about that is that when you do that, there's an interaction happening between you and the patient where the patient feels like, wow, he or she is customizing this for me. That's my head. I mean, I think for those of us who work with any type of x-ray, right, much less this, what we're looking at in front of us, patient looks at this thing and goes, oh my gosh, is that me? Wow, that's so wild. And they look at it and all of a sudden they associate with it. So the first thing is creating the association, creating a commonality where you, the dental person who has this vast education about dentistry, can now have kind of like a meeting place with a patient who needs the dentistry but has no clue about dentistry. You're just asking him or her for $20,000 or $25,000, or in this case that we're looking at, up to $50,000, right? So you have to explain a reason for them to come to the party, or have a reason for them to come to the party. And I think that there are very few tools in dentistry that allow you to kind of like share the cord, if you will. Like, how can we do that with composites? How can we do that with endo? We can, don't get me wrong, but I think to the level of a big treatment plan as it relates to communicating the value of a treatment plan, this is a cornerstone piece. So first of all is, the first thing I want to say is, we now have a commonality where we both can kind of jump off a platform. The second thing is we can show them the pros and cons about the treatment that they're interested in. So for instance, if a patient comes in, like this scan that we're looking at, patient comes in and the patient has maybe, not in this case, because this guy or gal has some pretty nice bone there, but they have no maxillary bone. You know, if you don't take a CBCT and they come in and they say, listen, I've seen the commercials, I really want 4 or 5 implants and I want my teeth today. If you don't have this type of software to show them that they don't have bone, I think that dialogue can go very south. You don't have bone, unfortunately, we won't be able to do this without grafting it, et cetera, et cetera. So going back to the question, how do I use this as a quote unquote selling point? I'd like to think of it as a more of an educational point. And as long as I could explain why something is happening and where we need to go with it, and provide 3, as I do, really solid options, then they just have to decide, am I the one? Can they afford my care? It's no longer a question of convincing someone that the sinus is low or that they don't have enough bone. It's right in front of you. So pre-COVID, okay, this was a really instrumental tool for me to start the conversation. And then the next thing you know, there's only 2 people in the room. There's a story happening. I'm the author. They're looking at purchasing the book about them. And it's kind of like you just go and you talk about it. And you talk about the option. And you talk about the money. Or your staff talks about the money. But you create this story. And it allows you all of the colors, the coloring books, and you just gather this information and you paint this picture for them. And they leave going, wow, you know, this makes a lot of sense. Now I just have to figure out what I can afford. Do I want to take this prosthesis in and out, et cetera? Well, now we shift to post-COVID, and things like this are more important than ever. Because everybody is looking for the gates to open, the floodgates to open, and let's get back to work. Is it May 1? Is it May 15th? Is it June 1? Well, that's when we just get back to work. And then the rumble starts a little bit because now we got to get back in the momentum and the cadence of the practice. So I think what we need to do is take a breath, take our time, and have these tools even more at our disposal. So that way, when a patient comes in and instead of seeing 15 patients in a day, maybe at the beginning we're seeing 9, right? They're just as scared of us as we are of them right now, right?
Right.
They're worried about the dental practices. They're going to be doing some research on, do we have the appropriate negative pressure rooms, all that stuff. So when they do come in, the whole thing is to give them that 5-star service and have things like this to talk to them about their care and being a one-on-one practitioner. And so I know that was a long-winded answer to a pretty good question, a very good question. But I feel that dentistry as we see it is not going to be what it was before. When we go back, then we're going to have to really pull from our tool chest to show why we're different and why that patient should have that care done with us. And I think that the number one thing separate of compassion is communication.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then using the data we have as part of that communication tool.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, I always, when I lecture about stuff, if you've seen me before, I talk a lot about the value, right? Not just the value to us as dentists, but the value to the patient. What are they buying? Is it a value to them, right? And people, it used to be the top 3 reasons for, you know, the denial or forfeit of care were fear, time, and money. And it's kind of not that way anymore. Actually, it's not that way anymore. Post-COVID, the reason that people refrain from having care done is because they didn't always find a value in the treatment presented. And I'll give you a classic example. If you're watching, I know that we have a lot of people on this. If you're watching, my question to you would be, if you don't feel that that's true, my question to you would be, how come the person keeps coming to their hygiene appointment but won't have their endo done? Why? And the real reason is, you know, you can say it right now. There's 3 words. It doesn't hurt. And so they're not going to spend $2,000. Whereas if you have a tool to be able to communicate, you know, what's there, the reasons that it's there, how it's progressing in size, and how it could be detrimental to their health and to other teeth, I think that the motive and the value is going to be different. So all those things together, I've been using it, for 15 years now. And if I had cone beam taken away from me, I would literally probably hang it up. I would literally feel like I'd be practicing with one arm. But I always look at ways to provide exceptional patient care. And I think that the care is not only in my hands and how well I suture. I think the care is also in the cumulative expression of treatment, all the way to when we tighten our last screw.
Right. Really looking forward to your presentation next week on the 22nd, leading into that and talking a little bit more than just, hey, we're using software. How are we making that connection with the patient, on there is the main thing there. So,
yeah, so I know that you had brought up some stuff about the guided surgery thing. We did last week, I did a beginning kind of intro to guided surgery, which is really cool. We had a lot of advanced and expert clinicians on there. It was quite a nice group. And for those of you who are listening, if you want to check it out, it's a really good fundamental basic piece. It's not pitchy, it's not salesy, it just is. So regardless what system you're using or whatever guides you're making or doing or whatever, it's some very good strategies and pearls. So it's on YouTube. If you type my name in and you type introduction to guided surgery, it's on YouTube, and it's a nice piece. I really enjoy it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really informative. So check it out. And then as Jim said and Paul said, Monday we'll be doing full arch step, which is really cool. And I'm really excited about that. This is all really cool. I think that's pretty much it today.
So there's your guided, yeah. Very good. Well, thank you for your time with us today. Everybody will be getting a link to this full mouth guided rehabilitation and also your April 1st one. So they will have access in that to the follow-up email right there on there.
Before I go, I would be remiss to not say this again. I just so appreciate your dedication to your customer. It's just really incredible. It's really, really good. And I appreciate it. I want to let you know. And I know that comes all the way from the top. Lou DeFilippo sets a great example. And this isn't a pitch to anyone. I'm just saying that the thing that I've enjoyed most about you guys is you guys. So thank you.
Doctor, thank you. Thank you for your time today.
Be safe.
You too.
I'm impressed. You're in your kitchen and you're wearing a beautiful Hugo Boss suit and a tie. That is commitment, dude. Paul, what's wrong?
At least look good from the waist up.
Okay, we won't go there.
Right. Yeah. Very true. That's the beauty of webinars. Everybody's doing them now, so it leaves a bit to the imagination. But thank you for your time again. And we will
thanks for
definitely talk to you next week. We're going to get into some question and answer session with our audience right now. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm here if you need me. You're going to shoot some clinical, so I'll hang out.
Thanks, gotcha, I appreciate it. Sounds good. Thank you. Paul, one thing, I did have some questions coming in on, how do we export this? This is one of the things that came through. And if we go up to main menu up here, we can do our export button right here. And two options. Option one, burning it to what sort of media, DVD or CD. Local disk is usually what we're burning it to, either to a flash drive or to the desktop. Maybe you're sending this off to your radiologist or to a lab or to another dental partner. We can compress and zip that file, but we can also export the project that we did. So if I want to have all my implants and my nerves, we can add that. And we also want to add the viewer. So we can add actually the full viewer here, the full Ez3D-i viewer with our NPR tab section, 3D pan tab, all of our tools. So the clinician that's receiving this can actually use the software. And then I can click save, and that's going to allow us to save it to a folder, which I've saved right here. That's one way to save that. Other questions that came in is, let's talk about guided surgery utilizing this. I've planned this in my Vatech software, and I don't want to have to plan it again in another third-party software. So What we could do here is we have our implants in our case. And if I go back up to main menu, we can go down here to go to third-party software. So I have 3D-DX or 3D Diagnostics. It's a lab that we partner with, or a dental company we partner with. And you can get your radiology reports through them. So we could go in and kind of fill out our script here. And let me fill out my top portion here. This would all probably be auto-filled once you create an account with them. And they make this really easy. Surgical guide order, implants, 27, 25, 24, 22. Do we need our surgical guide kit? What are we using? Ramen. We want to review it with them. Do we need any restorations? Then we're going to click on next. What they're going to need from us, including the DICOM, which is automatically going to be uploaded here, is we need the STL scan of the patient. So if we have a optical scanner, we're going to want to send that. We could also send the model via UPS or ship it to them. But really, you click on Add Files and click Order, and then what they're going to do is contact you. And Dr. Engel, how long does that usually take for you when you do these cases? You know, a couple days, or I guess really depends. What is kind of an average timeline for that?
Yeah, so typically they'll do a GoToWebinar and design the case with you within 2 or 3 days. And then after that,
Right.
The average 3 to 4 working days. If you have a case, sometimes I have a case where someone's coming in from out of town. You can pay a little rush fee, get it in a day and a half.
Right. Gotcha. So yeah, so we make it very, very simple and to work with them. You're going to still go through the live. They're going to talk to you about what your implants and your guide and some specifics. Kind of review the case, and then, like Doctor said, you're going to get your guide back in the mail within a short amount of time. Yeah.
I just wanted to add one thing for those of you who aren't familiar with it. This is referred to as the dual scan technique. Okay, so regardless what image you're using or what printer you're using or what guide maker you're using, this whole thing falls under the category of a dual scan protocol technique. Obviously, a DICOM set is required for any guided surgery, big or small in nature, from singles to full arch. So, yeah.
Right. Now, in this case, we took our large 16:9 scan because we did want to see our joints, TMJ, and full area. What are your thoughts, if you don't mind me asking, on if we're looking at something like this to do this all on 4 and talking about AP spread and things like that? Is an 8x8 or an 8x9 large enough for us to do that, or should we look into doing a larger scan and considering, you know, the joints and the overall dental health here for our patients?
Yeah, I prefer the bigger view myself. Can you accommodate it with an 8x8? Certainly, but it's like it's I want to see a big picture. I just feel like when I'm doing full arch or full mouth reconstruction, I just want to look at everything. It just, to me, it feels more comfortable. Now, I do want to reiterate that an 8x8 will do it. So if you don't mind looking at a smaller FOV or field of view, the 8x8 will accomplish it. You just won't see things like the TMJ joints, and you know, you'll just be limited in space, but doable. But again, I prefer, you know, being a surgeon, I would prefer to see the whole view of myself.
Okay, thank you. Paul, do we have any other questions coming in?
Yeah, we have a ton of questions. One, somebody's asking if they can get a link, since we have Dr. Engel here, a link to Dr. Engel's video and information. So where should we point them?
They're going to get an email afterwards. So everything's going to be in the email. You'll receive it 3 hours from when we end the session. You'll have a link to all of Dr. Engel's information. You'll have a link to the Engel Institute, the April 1st session, the April 20th session, the April 22nd session, and then also this recording. You also have a recording of our video today. It won't be a link on there, but we're going to upload this to our website, and you'll have clear instructions on how to get to this recorded video, which will be uploaded to the Vatech website under the Customer Learning Center.
So, Jim, I'll also add a really easy way to find, even if it's just highlights or pathways to my stuff, and thank you for the question, is Instagram. You could just go to @Todd Engel Poddengel, and you'll be able to find pretty much whatever you want to. You might even see some of my favorite. So all the videos, all the lectures, all my classes, all of it will be associated with my Instagram account. So if you do that, even if you want to ask me personal questions or DM me, go ahead. It's fine. Got a little bit of time.
Sounds great. Paul, what else do you have there for us?
Why did you use 30 degrees for those multiple implants? The all-in-4 there.
Is this
All
me?
right. Doctor, I will let you take that one, but yeah, before we do that, here's your Instagram account. We just pulled it up. All kinds of exciting things on there.
The dirty
Going
ones,
through there.
I'll probably stop there, Jim.
All right,
Just-
don't go too far. Gotcha.
I'm just kidding.
On there.
You go
Sure.
there.
Right.
Typically one case a day, and I try to find unique cases where you can, there's just little special learns to them, or pearls. There's a cool one on this morning.
Sure.
So the question about AP spread, it's I want to make sure that we understand that AP spread determines how many teeth we can put in. But the thing about the AP spread, when it first came out, it was designed to find the anterior most implant and the posterior most implant, and then take that space and do a multiplication factor as to how far you could cantilever back off the last implant. Okay, so to answer the question of why did we tilt the implants, if we have a straight up and down implant, then our anterior posterior spread is from here to here. If I take one of my implants and I tip it 17 degrees, you could see from fingertip to fingertip that AP distance is opening, and even more at 30. So the idea of tipping implants to a certain degree all depends on where the back tooth is. So a lot of times you'll see a case where someone will put 4 implants in the lower anterior mandible, very close together, because that's where we have a lot of type 1 good bone. And that's great. But the problem is if they're very close together and they're on a straight line, differentiating anterior posterior is very minimal. It could be in some cases 2 or 3 millimeters. So AP spread stands for anterior posterior distance of where the teeth can go with support. The other thing we want to keep in mind is, and I'm going to be talking about this Monday on the full arch piece, is we want to avoid cantilevers. So there's a big game change in guided surgery right now. I don't want to get into it now because it's not about that. But ideally, we want teeth on top of implants. And by tipping implants like you see down here, we could avoid things like the mental foramen, or that we could tip them anterior and avoid the sinus in the maxilla. The idea of that is to put the platform closer to the posterior where the molar should be. So tipping 30 degrees, which was the question, gets us further pointed backwards, and then we compensate that with uprighting abutments.
Right. Dr. Engel, somebody's asking for the session on the 20th, your session, will you be using Vatech software?
Actually, it's a great question. So all of my courses, guys, all of my courses are agnostic courses. And by that, I mean, I teach you how to do it with anything. So you don't have to have Vatech. You don't have to have any other cone beam manufacturer. It is about learning how to do guided surgery with a set of DICOM files. Now, that being said, I have a choice and I'm a Vatech user. So there's 2 parts of me. There's what do I do and how do I teach? Because I realize that not everyone's going to play Straumann. Not everyone's going to use Vatech. Not everyone's going to use 3D diagnostics. So as a speaker, I want to make it pertinent for everybody. And it's more about what's being taught versus the instrument that's being used. So the short and long of it is this. Yes, I will use Vatech because that's been my machine of choice for a number of reasons for the last 7 years. However, if you're not engaged in 3D yet with Vatech, you will still get a big learn out of the session. I hope you come out of it being part of our family, because I feel that it's an incredible family, as I've already said. But if you show up and you're interested in learning 3D, that's exactly what you're going to learn.
Great.
Thank you.
Jim, can you talk about paralleling? Somebody asked if they could parallel, number 24, 25 as an example.
Sure. Yeah, so let's do this. Let me, I can just right click and we'll go ahead and hide these here. And I can actually, let's hide all of these. And let's talk about paralleling our implants. One nice thing is I talk about is this angle here, our line, our red line, is where the implant's going to fall. So if I go over here on the right, I'm going to extend out my scan here back into the mandible. And I'm actually going to rotate this. So what I could do is I could go to insert implant and we can do multiple implants. So follow my angle here. And if I go multiple implants through here, I'm going to place 3. We could click, we could go insert. And now I'm going to click, click, click. All of those implants are parallel with the same angle due to my red line being switched here. So if I did want to go back to my anterior implants here, I know that these are going to be vertical, my implants here. I could come in and go insert implant, knowing that I'm at the same angle. Go to my multiple, click on my 25 and 24, click insert, and I can click across and place my 2 implants, knowing that they're going to be perfectly parallel with each other right there. So that's what I was talking about as paralleling my implants there. Other thing was using my angle tool if I need to go to the contralateral arch to get those angled also on there.
Hey, Jim, can I jump in on that real quick?
Certainly.
I mean, you are talking about angles, and I'm Dr. Angle, right? So
That's right.
it's fair is fair. Anyway, one thing that I want to point out here that's really, really important is, if you're seeing cases like this, not everybody has the money to do full arch implant supported hybrids at $25,000 an arch. Some people choose a different path, such as an implant supported denture, overdenture, which is a great treatment. It's miles better than just a denture. Dentures, our chewing capacity is at 10%, and you give someone a few implants and snap it in, and then they go to 70, 80%. But here's the thing. The benefit to what you're looking at right now in the tool here, and you don't have to memorize how it was done because these guys are pros at it. But if you're new to this, other than your take home being that you can do this, here's the take home for you clinically. When a denture goes in, unlike a fixed prosthesis, a denture has to have a path of insertion. So when you snap something in, there's a degree variance that you have to stay within, or you can't get the back to snap as well as the front. So I don't know if you've ever, I'm sure you have, because I have too, been in a situation where the patient says, Doc, when I bite here, it snaps up in the front, or if I bite in the back, this side, it snaps up on this side. It all has to do, there's a few things, but mainly with draw. So when you're looking at something like this, the idea about paralleling implants for path of insertion on anything that is removable is priceless. Not only is it priceless for the path of insertion and draw, but it's also priceless because you can actually position your implant in the bone that's prosthetically directed to come out the inside of the cingulum of the tooth, but you can also position it to be in the thickest part of the intaglio surface of the denture. So when you put on your abutment, if this makes sense, or your locator attachment, you have zero show through in the denture. So if you're fixing holes in the acrylic, or you have show through, or you're patching your dentures facially, palatal-lingually, because the implants are positioned back, this is a huge benefit for you to be able to parallel implants. In fact, 100% of the time, if I'm doing implant overdenture cases, 100% of the time, I look at all of the varying degrees between all of the implants. 4 to 7, 7 to 10, 10 to 13, 13 to 4, 13 to 7, 4 to 10. And I make sure that all of those are within inside 20 degrees of divergency. And if they're inside 20 degrees of divergency, I know the denture won't snap. Hope that helps.
Thank you for your pearls of knowledge.
That's all I got. I might have to go.
Gotcha. Paul, what else you got there?
Let's see. Can you talk a little bit? A couple of people were asking about sending guides to labs. So can you just talk
Actually,
about
while
that?
you're looking, I just had one.
What's that? You cut out there for a second.
You broke up on me a little bit. Can you repeat the question, please?
Somebody's asking about sending the scans out to labs for guides, what our options are.
Sure.
Is that
you can send the scan out to any lab. It's a DICOM format, digital imaging in medicine. So it is not proprietary to the software. So if your lab says, hey, I'm using a Straumann software, Nobel software, Blue Sky Bio software, you can send this out to the lab. They can go ahead and do the planning there. We talked about going to main menu and going to export here. That's how you're going to do that for your export. If you wanted to send it specifically, we also have our 3D-DX that's loaded in our software. I do have a few users who are Implant users where we can open this up and then it will get imported directly into Implant and then Nobel Clinician. One last question I get a lot is, can I export this? You know, Blue Sky Bio is really popular. You can see on here what I've done is I can right click on my icon here, and we've been just double clicking and opening Ez3D-i. You have various softwares where you can load that into, and I've created this go to Blue Sky Bio link. So when I actually click on that, it directly opens into Blue Sky Bio. To reference that, I'll show you really quick, but we do have a video that runs through that on our website. Again, that's going to be vatechamerica.com, going to the customer learning center there. But what I've done is I went up to main menu and settings. I'm going to go in linkage and email here, and you can see we have several viewers we can do. So I've set this last one for my Blue Sky Bio. We do have a link for our co-diagnostics or also our in vivo software there too. So you do have different options on loading this directly into different third-party softwares there.
I'd like to make a comment on that as well. From a practicality standpoint, this is great information. From a surgical and liability standpoint, I want to make a suggestion to all of you. That is this: one of the most critical parts of guided surgery is out of your hands in a lot of cases. And by that, if you go to either my Instagram or the YouTube thing and you look at the video that I did, the webinar, sorry, that I did on basic guided surgery, I showed a case that went south for me. It went really bad, and I have no problem sharing it because the reality is that this stuff happens. It happens to the best of us. So it was one of my it was a moment that I wasn't very happy with, to be honest. And again, I put the whole thing in there in the webinar, and I showed what happened step by step, including the result. When you are going to a lab or you're going to a guide maker, the number one thing that should be on your mind is not the price of the guide. The number one thing that should be on your mind is how astute is this individual or company at making guides? Are they coming back more resourceful after COVID and starting to figure out if they could do it? Is the quality control manager the one that is inputting all the information because they have to make sense of her job, or what is it? And here's why. The most important piece of guided surgery, without question, is the merge of the data. And that's where mine went wrong. It's when you take the STL, stereolithography file, and you take the CBCT DICOM file set, and you merge them. That merge has to be impeccably clean, and it has to superimpose like within hundreds of microns. And if it doesn't, then what's going to happen is your guide will fit the mouth. Everything will fit in the guide in terms of the drills. And when you drill it and place your implant will not be where you designed it. And you won't know because the guide fits perfect. And that's the example I gave in my case. So when you rush back to the practice, and if you haven't started guided surgery yet, or if you are doing guided surgery, I highly recommend that whoever is doing your guides, I mean, that is That is your trampoline net. That's all you've got to keep you safe. You have to make sure that the person that's doing the merging of this data really knows what they're doing. It could be an expensive $30 that you're saving if not. So I've never been partial to one person having all the business or one business having all the business. So go to whoever you want. But I just want to say, before you start sending stuff out and getting deals on guides, you really want to make sure that they have a long tenure of making guides more than what their price is.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So somebody's asking why the measurements taken between the lines drawn on that section tab, the anterior aspect of the implants for anteriors and distal aspect for posterior. I think they're referring to the AP spread.
Yeah, I think we've kind of covered our AP spread there. Dr. Engel, you'd covered that before. I'm going to refer them back to your webinar session, the April 1st one, and then the April 15th. We did cover that one. That comment on talking specifically about AP spread. And I know you'll talk about that on your April 20th session and maybe even on the 22nd there. So
Go hit it.
I'm going to say tune in next time for that one. We have covered that question. Yes.
Got it. When somebody's asking what determines where buccolingually the blue dot in the scout window is, I think he's referring to the 3D pan window and the curve in there.
Yes. So this blue dot here over on the scout is going to really determine partially with where our target box is at. So right here.
So Jim, it looks like your screen is frozen. Is that just on my end, or is that?
It is frozen there. So let me check one or two things. Check it now. That should be, there we go.
Yeah,
so now it's back. Perfect, thank you. So the blue dot, what we're referring to is this dot down here on our scout view. Sometimes it may not be in bone. And what that's referring to is this intersection here is one of the points there. So if I move this around, we can see we're in bone. If I come out of bone there. The other point that's going to be is last week we talked about tracing, creating our pano here. And a lot of this is going to have to do with where our arch is traced. So if I scroll down here in the mandible and I trace my arch here, and let me scroll back up and I go across, that's going to be kind of that second or third dimension of where that point's going to be whenever we do that reconstruction. So this is going to determine where the blue dot is there on that. All right.
Great. Can we correct the orientation? So you had discussed in the beginning about the patient orientation for positioning. Can we correct that within the software?
So here's how I would do that. You'll notice that I did have to correct the orientation here. If I click on my reset, it's going to reset back to the original orientation. What I did was I came up to main menu and I saved a project here. So I know that project's going to be saved. So if I do have to recreate that orientation, I just go back to my project and it's going to automatically autocorrect that. So currently I don't have an autocorrect where we can lock that. But that is something that we've talked to our developers about adding to be able to adjust this and then lock that specifically for malpositioning issues on there. And that's really what comes by. It's so important to make sure we don't have any patient movement. We are properly positioned. Dr. Engel talked about the overlay of the STL file. Let's say we have patient movement in here. Trying to get the developers or our labs to overlay those STLs with patient movement, that is a battle. We've all seen scans where we've tried to trace the nerve, and I think we looked at this last week, patient movement, where we've tried to trace the nerve, and here I can see the nerve here, but with any sort of movement, that's going to be really difficult to view. So that is really important, is positioning. If we have the initial scan is hard to work with, it's going to be difficulty throughout the whole process when we're doing this on there.
Right. Okay, 2 questions left. May I get a link to join the next webinar?
Yes, everyone's going to get an email after this, which will have all the links you could possibly want. We're going to have the link to Dr. Engel's Vatech course next Wednesday, April 22nd at noon Eastern. We're going to have a link to his April 1st webinar pre-recorded, the basics of guided surgery. Then a link to his April 22nd advanced guided surgery. You also have a link to his website. And then you'll have a link to the Vatech website that includes these previously recorded sessions. So I think we have everybody covered on access to information, yes.
Great. And then one more here. How can you tell if you have the latest version of Ez3D-i and how do you upgrade?
That's a great ending point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to main menu. I'm going to come down to about. I can see my version over here, 5.190. And what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our website and go to Vatech America. If I come down, we can go here to our Ez3D-i installation kit. And it's going to show us our latest version within this kit right here. So that's where you can do your downloads. There's also instructions on here specifically for downloading. Let me reload. So 5.1.9 release notes, how to do this. Other things I get a lot of questions is, I need to get a hold of tech service really quick. What can I do? Really, if you look on your FAQ section, every week we talk about this, really good points. Popular FAQs, how do I upgrade? How do I get the latest version? I came in the morning and I've got a data disconnect button. We basically have a lot of these icons here. So you can click and watch. How do I export some data there? So I really wanted to point that out. Looking at our webinar session, webinar schedule here takes us down to our events and meetings. Today we're on the April 15th. Next week we're going to have, and you're going to go ahead and click your link right here. It's going to go ahead and take you to your registration page right there.
Perfect. And Jim, we've kind of moved where the webinars. Can we show them where the webinars are? The past webinars?
Correct. So customer support, customer learning center. Customer learning center here, here's all your different devices that go through usage. Software, here's your webinar session. So today you won't be getting a link with the webinar. You're going to go here to Customer Learning Center. You're going to click on webinar. And we have our April 1st, our April 8th, we'll have our April 15th, 22nd, 29th through there. So if I want to look at my 3D-i software, video training here, going all the way down through our 3D Pan tab, TMJ, reports, sending your scan to 3D-DX or 3D Diagnostics. We really like that one. We have that one in there 3 times. Third molar extraction. So a lot of things we've talked about. There's some clinical tools in here that you can use. If you do have questions, you also have our Vatech education email. Please reach out to us if you want to talk about having additional training. I know our education team has visited your office, or a lot of your offices. Our sales team have also done that. We try and do our training in the layered approach. We really want to take care of our clients and have that extra personal touch to kind of go on above and beyond, and we do pride ourselves in that. So please reach out to us, education@vatechamerica.com. But here's your software download for all your different videos there.
Great. Dr. Engel, do you have anything else you want to address?
Yeah, so thank you. Actually, just in closing, I just wanted to mention one thing. These webinars, especially one that's built like this one, is typically bring a lot of 2D users or a lot of individuals that are new to 3D. And I just want to make, from a clinician standpoint, I just want to make one suggestion, which as dentists we're not very good at typically, but I try to employ it myself as I learn. Don't be too intimidated with the technology. Understand that this is it's a language. It's just like if you wanted to learn Farsi or Japanese or Spanish or whatever, you can't learn it in a couple weekends listening to people explain the conjugations of verbs. It takes a long time and it takes practice. So if you're looking at this technology and considering being involved in this technology, I want to encourage you, as opposed to try to think, as opposed to thinking, wow, Jim just went over some great stuff, Paul just went over great stuff, Dr. Engel had some great stuff. Oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. It can be, and I realize that. And so as a clinician, I just want to make this suggestion to you. Take a breath and look at 3D as something that's going to give you yet another arm to work with and another tongue to communicate with. And just take it in steps. And if you come to the 22nd, that would be great, because I think one of the things that I came up with a long time ago was 5 clicks to yes. We're going to call it one slice at a time. I think once you understand just fundamental basics, just maybe 4 or 5 things, and how to do them, which are actually quite easy, daily with every patient, I think what you'll do is it will give you a strong fundamental basis, and then you could grow off that. You can dig deeper into the 3D pan and look at the Hounsfield units, and then start to look at positioning implants and spinning around in the oblique position to identify if there's any perforations in the sinus, or mapping the nerve, etc. But it's literally a language. So I just want to tell you, if I could tell you anything, it's don't be intimidated by this, because if you look at the whole pie at once, it can be. Just look at it slice by slice. That's funny, no pun intended, but do it. Look at it slice by slice, and there's no way you could eat the pie at one sitting. Just understand that it's going to be a great tool for you as a clinician. There's no question it has made me better, not only with my hands, but simply understanding the path of treatment if a tooth should be saved. One of the things that I'm going to talk about that I've seen more than anything is internal resorption at the CEJ, which you can't see on a PA with a PFM crown. All right, so take it piece by piece and understand that it is a language and it takes a long time to master it. So as you see Jim and Paul click buttons and go back and forth, these guys do it every single day for many, many years. So don't let it intimidate you. Just hop in, knowing that you're going to use it for the fundamental sound features initially, and then just like anything else you learned over time, start adding your flavor and coloring it in your way. And I think that it's a really good approach. So thank you for my closing comments. Thank you guys who are still on. I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you again, hearing from you. And Paul, thank you. And Jim, thank you. And Louis DeFilippo and the whole Vatech gang, thank you.
Dr. Engel, thank you very much. Everyone who attended, thank you. We look forward to working with you next week. You will get an email in about 3 hours that have all the links to Dr. Engel's sessions, the April 22nd session, this recorded session, and our past recorded sessions. And keep an eye on our website specifically for what we have coming up. Dr. Engel on the 22nd presenting treatment one slice at a time, 29th and May 6th, talking about anatomy. What are comparing a 2D pan to a CBCT? How do we learn and go into that? So again, thank you everybody. Dr. Engel, thank you for taking the time to meet with us today. We look forward to seeing you next week. Paul, thanks for another successful webinar. And thank you to all of our Vatech family out there that attended today. Thanks again.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Guys, bye-bye.